Looking to take your financial knowledge to the next level? You're in the right place. Welcome to Ask Ralph, offering accounting, technical, and financial advice. Whether you're looking to save taxes or improve your business, he's got you covered. Here's your host of Ask Ralph, Ralph Eastup Jr.
Hello and welcome back to the Ask Ralph Show as we continue our franchising success series. If you've missed any of these in our series, you can go back and listen to them on our podcast page. Now, during our last session, we started talking about the franchise disclosure document. So we're going to continue our discussion on there. We're picking up here when we look at section 11, which is the franchisor's advertising and training. Now, this is an important part to study as well. Not like anything is less important, but the franchisees are often required to contribute a percentage of their sales to one or more national, regional, or local advertising funds. So you need to understand in the franchise disclosure document where your money is going to go. You need to ask whether franchisees have any control over how advertising dollars are spent and if all franchisees and company outlets contribute equally to the advertising funds. Find out if the franchisor gets a commission or rebate when it places ads. If there's a rebate, who benefits, you or the franchisor? You need to look at, when you look at these advertising budgets, ask some tough questions. What are the administrative costs? What percentage of the fund is spent on national advertising or advertising in your area? How much of it is spent on selling more franchises or on other expenses? And this is a key thing because, you may have to pay a 5% like national advertising. Well, national advertising is great for name recognition, but does it help you in your market? So you need to have that understanding. Where is this advertising money going? Is a lot of it going for administration costs? Is this an operation, from the franchisor where it's another profit center for them that they're basically running a media or an advertising outlet as part of their franchise? Or is it really, suited towards the individual franchisee? Is there a board that makes these decisions? How is that governed? The next section included in this is training. And a new franchisee is going to typically count on the franchisor to provide all the business and operational training needed to run a successful franchise. The training you need depends on your business experience and knowledge of the franchisor's goods and services. So once you've determined that you're going to need this training, which you're probably going to need to understand their model, ask yourself some tough questions. Ask yourself about the trainers and their qualifications. Where do they come from? Are they former franchise owners? Are they members of the franchisor's, team that has gotten and makes us, successful? Who's eligible for training? Is this training only going to be provided to you as the owner of the franchisor? Or, are they going to send a training team out to your location to work with your potential staff and management team? You also need to understand the costs of training new employees and who pays. Once you get past that initial opening and let's say your business expands, how is that training going to work? Are they going to provide you with training for your new employees? You need to understand the length of those training sessions. Are they going to require you to send an employee to another location geographically? You got to bank on those costs because if you got to send them, across country, you're going to have hotel and all that sort of thing. You're going to have to pay them while they're doing that. You need to understand the amount of time spent on technical training, business management training, and marketing. Those are all key components, whether the franchisor offers ongoing training and at what cost. You may find out that this particular franchisor gives you that upfront training to understand the product, but then if you need any follow-up training or if you bring on new managers, you bring on new staff members, you may have to pay for that. So you've got to understand what those costs are. You need to understand whether support staff are available for troubleshooting in your area and how many franchisees they're responsible for. Understand their geographic locations. Do they have managers at the franchisor level that travel in particular areas? What level of access do you have? And then whether on-site individual assistance is available and at what costs. That's a very important component to this understanding the training. Now, the next section, section 11, is the renewal, termination, transfer, and dispute resolution. Now, we all go into these franchises assuming that things are going to be fantastic. Everyone's going to make money, but you need to understand the exit ramp when you're getting into this. You need to understand, what are your options for renewal once you're outside of the franchise agreement? What do you have to do or qualify for renewal, and what other fees and other contract terms may change? you may also have in this what your obligation would be to the franchisor after termination. For example, after termination, restrictions in the contract typically will stop you from operating a business that will compete with the prior franchise. So, let's use an example that you open up a Wendy's and you've gone through your franchise agreement. You're at the end of that and you decide not to renew, but because you're going to open up a Hardee's across the street, there may be a restriction, built into this franchise agreement. So that's something you want to take a look at. Now, Section 19 of the agreement, talks about the financial performance representations. This contains the claims the franchisor chooses to make about the sales or earnings of its franchises for which there is a reasonable factual basis. The franchise rule doesn't require a franchisor to provide sales or earnings information, but most do. Any claims the franchisor makes about sales, income, or profits must be in Item 19. No other spoken or written financial performance claims can be made if it doesn't appear in this Item 19 in the FDD. Of course, there are two exceptions to that. Number one is the franchisor may provide the actual records of an existing outlet if you're thinking of buying that. So, let's say you're going into a franchise that, someone has already been operating. You definitely want to take a look at the actual records of the existing outlet and have an understanding of why they're potentially leaving it. The franchisor may add to the information in line 19. For example, the franchisor may provide information about possible performance at a particular occasion or under particular circumstances. They may have already built into this, hey, we've already taken a look at your area, the area that we're thinking about franchising, and they've already done some pro forma financial statements. So that's the key to this. And, in Section 20, they talk about franchisee and franchise system information. This is where they're going to disclose, who else is involved in this? There are going to be things they're talking about the total investment, whether they were able to open their outlet in a reasonable time. Ask several franchisees who have been in business over a year about these questions. Ask them, how much was their total investment? Whether they were able to open their outlet in a reasonable time. Whether they were satisfied with the franchisor's training, opening assistance, and advertising. Whether the franchisor has been providing ongoing help and assistance and whether they've been able to break even. Now, that might sound like a funny question to ask, but, you need to look at how long is it taking them to be profitable. This all comes down to these, budget questions. If the franchisor says you're going to do this, but then it turns out that, it doesn't work like that, then these are all part of the things you need to understand. You need to understand whether the franchisor is providing the services and assistance it promised and fulfilling its contractual obligations. What problems, if any, are they having with the franchisor? Whether they would invest in another outlet. Ask the question, if you were given the opportunity, would you do another store? Whether they're satisfied with the advertising program, whether they're satisfied with the cost, delivery, and quality of goods or services they must buy from the franchisor, its affiliates, or sole approved suppliers. This may also mean getting involved and looking at former franchisees and asking, the problems that they had, whether they broke or even made a profit, and whether, how long they operated it and their business background and why they left the franchise system. So this is your opportunity to understand the whole system and, do some due diligence and understand what goes into, those which are successful and those which are not. Now, in our next session, we're going to wrap up this FDD by talking about the financial statements and franchisee associations.
You've been listening to Ask Ralph, brought to you by Saggio Accounting Plus. Please subscribe to and rate our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, and leave us a rating and review. Our podcast is produced by Carolyn Peters. Thank you for listening, and be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Ask Ralph Media. You can also hear me each week on 1450 WILM and on 1410 WDOV in Delaware and on the iHeartRadio app. Submit your questions or ideas for future shows by sending an email to AskRalph@AskRalph.com.
The information contained in this episode of Ask Ralph is based on data available as of the date of its release. Saggio Accounting Plus and Ask Ralph Media Inc. is under no obligation to update this content if changes occur. Applying this information to your specific situation requires careful consideration of all facts and circumstances, and any information provided is not to be considered as financial, tax, or legal advice. Please consult your tax advisor or attorney before acting on any material covered.